What's going on, everybody? This is number 8 Axel, and today we're going to be covering expert mode on Nitrado for ARK PlayStation 4 servers. Now, this is back with my example server I started in the first video. One thing I want to cover before we do that is there is this checkbox here that shows internal names. So what this does, except for this is not actually going to be shown. Don't worry about this. When you turn expert mode on, you will lose engine settings and general, and you'll just get a expert settings option under the settings on your side menu here. This will be what your actual parameters would look like when you enable expert mode. So let's go ahead and enable it. I will get a thing about what it will do. So we're going to hit continue. Save changes. And give it a minute to load. Okay, so it's going to bring you back to this general page. Now, the general page is now extremely simplified. You have server language, map, restart countdown, gameplay log, restarting your backup, some of the admin log stuff, the restrictions for survivors, a couple of the basic settings. Some of these are going to be in your expert mode settings, so if you change them here, they may not change. So we've already covered all of this in the first video, so we're going to go all the way back up. Now we're going to go to expert settings. Now this is why I'm doing this in its own video, because this is a lot to take in. Now, in order to edit any of this, you're going to have to stop your server. So just go ahead and stop it. You can edit this, but you won't be able to make any saves until this is done. So, from line 1, you cannot change any of this. This is all game settings, and it will not like it. Scalability groups is another one where you don't change any of this. Session settings. So this is where you can change your session name, which is back to the Nitrado.net game server. So let's put it to example. This, while it shows you cannot change, this is actually dictated by Nitrado, depending on how many slots you're paying for. This is, again, your admin password. This is saved even when you change to expert settings. If you remember my first video, this was the admin password that it showed, it was randomly generated. Server password, again, this is if you want to make the server private. You just put a password, and now you can only join if you have the password, which is password. Clan free. So this is basically just all of those settings from before. Message of the day. So this is if you want to change that message of the day, which again is back to this ARK is hosted by Nitrado.net. So this is all saved under what's known as game user settings.ini. So this is the old general settings page. You will not want to touch engine ini. There's nothing in there. Do not touch it. You might screw your server up if you start putting stuff in there. Now we're going to go to the game ini. Now, previous video I mentioned custom game.ini settings, and there are custom settings you can create. So I'm actually going to go over here and open Notepad+. So this is an example of some of that stuff. I know it's a lot, and it is very complicated when you look at it, but once you kind of learn how to do it, it makes sense. So we're just going to kind of go by my settings here. So harvest resource amount class multipliers. This would be those previously mentioned harvest resource settings. So this is for oil. As you can see, primal, sometimes it gets duplicated. Don't worry about it. So here, I get 10 times as much oil when I hit an oil vein. Black pearl. So yeah, this only affects raw materials. It will not affect crafting materials, like because I've tried that. As you can see, I've got gasoline here on line 19, metal ingot on line 18. Only allow specified engrams. You'd want this set to true if you want to disable certain engrams, obviously. Spawn and choose. Okay, so this gets complex. This here allows you to create a custom dino spawn string, which means if you want to add a dino that is not normally on your server, you can do that. Now, in order to do it, this is what you're going to have. Configure add NPC spawn entries container equals. Then you're going to have NPC spawn entries container class string equal. This is what is known as a spawn region. If you want to find the spawn regions, you can go to ARK's Gamepedia or just Google ARK Dino spawn regions. And it'll bring you to this page, which is ark.gamepedia.com/spawn entries, which I'll put this in the description. And it's going to be by map. So this is the island, and this is what dinos would spawn there. So spawn entries beach is used on essentially for what I understand all servers except Aberration. So you can copy that, Control C it, Apple C it, whatever you're using, and you put it here in the quotation marks. Then comma, NPC spawn entries. Now, an entry name can be whatever you want. This is just a title. It does not actually affect anything. Entry weight. This is how much the game is going to prioritize it. The higher this setting is, the more you're going to see. I highly recommend leaving this under 1. Otherwise, the game is going to prioritize it too much. Now, NPCs to spawn strings. This is where you've got to go look up your dinos. So, we're going to go back and let's go look up gas bags. For example. So, you're going to go, again, I highly recommend going to the Gamepedia page. So, under spawn command, you're going to hit expand. You're going to need the gas bags character BPC from the summon command. So you're going to want this one. Lantern bird, that is a featherlight. So this would be for a featherlight. Keep in mind, all the syntax and context is required. So you need the quotes, you need the parentheses. Otherwise, the game will just stop there and not read anything else. So, an entry name, gotcha. So this is for gotchas. We're going to glow bugs, lantern lizards. So this just, all of these are just more of those. So, if there's demand, I can kind of create maybe an example profile for Ragnarok or something. Then NPC spawn limits. This would make it so that you can limit how many of those are spawned. If you're spawning custom creatures, you're going to want this because this will cap how many can actually spawn on the server, and I believe it will pull from whatever the default map is. Crafting cost. This is a fun one. Now, if you want to make it so maybe element or you want to make a fibercraft server, this is what you need to know. Config override item crafting costs. Item class string. This is going to be the actual item. So, this is for element. I've got this one got duplicated again. So for this one, I have made it so that element requires 5 black pearls and 1 polymer to craft. Oh boy. Now, if you hit require exact resource type, this will be like if you're using polymer, you can use organic polymer if this is set to false. If I set it to true, I now have it. Base resource requirement, this would only be effective if you have items like the metal pickaxes that have various variants like Mastercraft and Ascendant. This would tell you how much on top you would need. So if it's 5 and set to 2, I would need 10 of that item. Max item quantity. This is stack modding, as it's known. Again, whatever item you want, comma quantity equal. Then you're going to want max item quantity equal 200. Always ignore multiplier. That sometimes if you set that to false, it's going to set it back and not even accept the setting. So just leave that true. So we're going to go down. So yeah, as you can see, this is I've got on most everything kind of separately. So there's a lot of it. All right, config override supply crate items. This allows you to modify what you can find in supply drops. So you're gonna have whatever supply crate it's gonna be. So this is the level 3 or white mid item sets. So how many sets of items can be found? Max item sets, the maximum number. The power of which each one is going to have. So again, prioritization. Set random without replacement true. So if you do not have any item sets, it's just going to put random stuff in. Now we're going to scroll a little bit. So set name. Again, like the class names above, you don't have to put anything here. You can put whatever you want. I just put untitled because I was lazy. Now, this is the minimum number of items in that item set that can appear. So I'm going to have at least 12 items. At most, I will have 20. Again, this means it's priority 1. All of them I have set to priority 1. Set weight 500. Between others, how much is going to over prioritize items from that one? So let's keep going. Again, random without replacement true. Okay, here we go. Entries. So this is the actual item. So if I have it set to 250, that means this is for kibble. At the large EX kibble is going to be weighed at 200 value 250. So anything higher will have higher priority, lower priority. And then minimum quantity. So what is the minimum number of this that I want to appear if it's selected? 20, max 20. Min quality, max quality. This only affects items such as armor and equipment. So if you have a min quality 0, it's going to be that base item as if you just crafted it out of an inventory. Max quality is whether or not you want it to have ascendant variants available. Not everything has an ascendant variant, so if you do set it to a higher number like 1.536, it'll just default back to the default. Force blueprint. This means if you set this to true, you're always going to get a blueprint for it. Chance to be blueprint override creates a percentage chance on whether or not you'll get a blueprint for it. If the item doesn't have a blueprint, there's no point in adding it. So that's just a bunch of that. Now, a couple other things that I'm not gonna cover because that stuff gets to be more complex. So we're gonna go back to that server. I'm just gonna go over a couple quick, easy ones if you don't want to go through all of that crazy stuff. So yeah, as you see, it is stopped now. So we're gonna go back to expert settings. Obviously, I lost my changes, but that's okay. Again, this is just for an example. We're going to go back to Game INI. So Game INI on here is going to have all of those old settings that we created. Now, a couple that are good to have. B, unlock engrams. I believe that's, let me double check, make sure I got that right. Unlock all. So here we go. So B unlock all engrams equals true. Now, if you set this, you will automatically unlock engrams as you level up. You will not need to worry about engram points. You will not need to worry about anything. So if you want to make it where, for small tribes, I highly recommend adding this in. On basic settings, you can put this under the custom game INI text box that I mentioned earlier. Basically, anything I mentioned before, you can put into that box, but you are limited on what can be put in. There is a hard text limit. I'm not sure what it is. So if you want to do all of that crazy stuff I have on this, all these lines, hundreds of lines of code, you're going to have to go to expert settings. Another thing you'll need to bear in mind if you go to expert settings, certain settings that are on your general do get carried over into this. So like taming speed multiplier is now on my game INI. So I have this just titled for what servers, certain Scorched Earth has its own, and there's a reason for that. Scorched Earth's items and stuff have their own tags, so I just created its own INI for when I'm using backups. So if you want to download and save your game INI, you can download and edit it in something like Notepad++. Otherwise, that's just kind of the basics of how to use that. So this just basically would turn it into, if you're changing it through a text editor, the files directly instead of just plugging it into a automated um, web interface. Obviously, this is for advanced users only. Um, Up top, like I said, basically on this one, line 1 down through 57, excluding lines 53, you don't want to change any of that. It will just get reverted by default because it's PlayStation. Otherwise, once you're done with your changes, you hit Save Changes. You'll get a notification from Windows normally on it. Then you're just going to hit Start Server. It'll start the server up, and you'll have your new changes. So that's just kind of a very basic explanation on the expert settings. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, don't play with expert settings. You can actually mess things up. And a lot of this isn't even used. Like, you can't create a ban list URL for PlayStation. You can't edit any of this. So that's just kind of really it. So to kind of close this video off, we're just going to go over back to this and just kind of explain some of the other items. So we're going to go back to my services. So as you can see, currently my aberration has 5 players. This is one of my actual servers. I run the Angel Wings cluster. So we're going to go on and load that one up. I'm just so we can kind of maybe get some more better explanation on some of the other things. So player control. So it's currently bugged, so you're going to want to uncheck online, and it's going to show every player that's ever been on the server. And it's alphabetical. Now, you are not going to need to worry about these middle ones. These don't mean anything. You cannot use this. In fact, if you hover over, it'll tell you the shown internal IDs or masked IDs used internally to give each player a unique identifier. They have no other purpose. If you ban a character, you're going to get this ban list on it. You can click to remove it. These are some players who have been banned on other servers that have not on here, but you can remotely ban if you know their ARK ID. Now again, use this as an excuse to talk about log files. So log files. This is where all your information is going to go. So this is your actual server information. So anything like this, if you're having issues where you'll get warnings, you go to the last. This is from since the last time the server was booted up, the last date of the game. Restart log shows when it was restarted. Now this shows if you're using the app. Nitrado API is if it's an automated and stuff like that. So yeah, that's really about it for actual server settings. Only other stuff, yeah, I kind of already mentioned is guest access rights. So if you have someone you want to give access to, for example, these are who I have given access to, you can set them to do different things. Certain things, they can't, even if you check, you can't do, like, FTP cannot be performed on PS4 servers, neither can MySQL. Debug console, again, is not available. So it's just, some of the stuff's just not available. ARK commands you can't do, and none of that, because unless you're doing PC. So yeah, that's really about it for these videos. If you have any specific questions, feel free to ask. I might be able to explain it a bit better. Again, some of that's going to be in the description for like those websites. So thanks for watching. If this helped, feel free to leave a like. I can always maybe update these and be a bit more organized later. So otherwise, I will see you guys later.